how important it is for you to be here for this next presentation. You are going to be thrilled. This next presenter is a sales expert, sales epitome. Who knows that sales are important in webinars? You got to know how to make sales, correct? Well, Eli Wild is the founder of Wild Influence, and he's done over, personally, $100 million in sales, like with one-on-one interactions. The man knows sales. As a matter of fact, he's the all-time top closer for Tony Robbins. Anyone heard of Tony Robbins? Yeah, everyone knows Tony Robbins, right? And we were actually just chatting. When he got the top sales closer for that special promotion, he got to spend a week in Namali, Tony's island in Fiji. And I've been there, and we had some great reminiscing of how awesome not only Tony is, but that island is. But you are in for a treat to hear what he has in store for you today. His whole goal is to make you more influential, whatever that means to you. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one and only Eli Wild.
It's December 2018, and I'm speaking again at a pitch fest. Has anybody ever been to a pitch fest where there's lots of speakers there, they're all up there, and they're all pitching their products and services? Most people hate those, but I love them because you get to see how each person presents and sells. This day, I'm not the headliner at all. In fact, nobody there knows my name, and I'm speaking right after a dude named Jordan Belfort. You guys ever heard of him? And I'm a huge fan. He's amazing at sales. And I'm taking notes, I'm watching this guy, and I'm like really into the presentation, but he did something in that presentation I didn't like. He told a couple stories, word for word, that I know were not his own. And it triggered something inside of me where I said, you know what? I'm gonna take away all this dude's sales. So when I came out on the stage, I induced a few frames into the audience that literally, by the end of the day, he had no sales and I had all the sales. If you're a good audience, at the end of this presentation, I'll share with you exactly what I did, word for word, and the frames that I installed in the audience. Would you like to see that? By the way, what's that? An open loop, yes? So this will be a unique presentation, and really quick, I know a lot of you here are looking at things like marketing and the things around the presentation. When I was connecting with Andy and the team and everybody here, about how amazing you guys are, I wanted to bring something unique. And I know Jason is here. Jason Fladley is going to give you some amazing information. And I heard in one of his presentations, I was listening to Jason, and somebody asked him about hypnotic language and the art of communication. And he says, well, that's something I install on the 4th or 5th pass. And just in that statement, I want you guys to think about it. He goes through it several times and begins to install language. And 2 people can have the same offers we're going to break down today, but 1 person can have more sales. So would you say there's something important in the way that we communicate what we do that's as important as the offer that we make? Does this make sense, yes or no? And so I want to share with you some things that I've done over the years that I've learned that have really helped me connect with the audience deeper, faster, and I'm going to show you some models that I think will help you create more trust in your audience and put them in what I call a buying state. When I started my sales journey, I was lost. I was mumbling and fumbling and stumbling on the phone selling dental products to dentists, but I saw people had the same offer, same script, same everything, and some people sold more than others, and I got really curious, and these 2 questions drove me. 1, why do human beings do the things they do? Because we've all had times in our life where we needed to do something, we said we're gonna do something or buy something, and we didn't, and other times where it was completely irrational, we said, you know what, I'm not gonna do this thing, but we did. And I know there's like a lot of you here have gone through Jason's stuff or you've read the Hermosi book, which is amazing, by the way. You have to master your offer. It's really important. But who here's ever been to a Tony Robbins event, by the way? Amazing. Or seen like a Myron Golden. Anybody seen him? Amazing. I bought Myron's 55K offer. I signed up for Tony Robbins event. I used my rent money. It was completely illogical. And I didn't know what the offer was. I was like, I have no idea what I'm buying. I don't know what this is. Just take my money. And so as important as your offer is, there's something to be said about how we emotionalize the audience, how we connect with them, how we challenge them, how we get vulnerable, how we pull them in a capacity to not only capture attention, but able to take them on this emotional roller coaster where they become addicted to hearing your voice and they can't wait to do work with you. Does this make sense or no? So I want to focus on how we communicate. And the other side is this. I want to share with you some of the patterns that I recognized because I really do believe the master skill of masters is pattern recognition. I want you to recognize some patterns in what I'm doing, and yes, I'm going to break them down. Hopefully you recognize some patterns in all great presenters that you can begin to adopt to your own communication style, then utilize those patterns And then when you get really good and you learn these fundamental building blocks of communication, you can create your own patterns. That way you don't have to use like a Russell Brunson thing or somebody else's stuff word for word. You can understand not just what to say, but why you're saying what you're saying. And when you do that, it will change the game for you. When I started getting into this game of sales, I was really lost, like I said, but then when I saw Tony speak, I was mesmerized. And eventually I got the job there, and I would go to events where I would see Tony speak. And before there was all these transcription devices, I would take my actual tape recorder, and I would record this man, and I would go home and I would type up by hand hours and hours and hours of what he was saying. I would hand transcribe everything out of his mouth. And then I would print it up, and I began to take like a pink highlighter, and I would highlight all the questions that he asked. And then I would look for when he changed the referential index and when he did embedded commands, and there'd be a pink highlighter or a green or a purple. And I just had this smorgasbord of all these colors on a page, and I began to look for patterns and then how I could change those and install those into my presentation. By the way, when I worked for Tony, I did 2 seminars a day, going to companies, selling people into Tony's main gig. The same job that Tony Robbins had for Jim Rohn is called an FSR, the Field Sales Rep Model. That's what I did for Tony. I did 2 seminars a day, every day, for 14 years. The same freaking seminar, the same freaking presentation. I could do it in my sleep 3,400 different times doing the same presentation. And I'm gonna share with you some of the insights I got from that. By the way, if you don't know who I am, that's me up there. Tony has a huge company now, and whoever's the biggest impact in all of Tony's companies gets an award that he created in my name. Because not only did I break all the sales there, I did it when I was sick, I did it when I was tired, I ended up coaching the other people in the company so they could get more sales, and we created some processes that will help all of you, like anybody, learn how to connect faster and deeper with the power of your words. So that's him giving me this thing on stage, 2010 or 2011, that's us in Fiji. And after I left the company, Tony asked me to do the sales pitch at the first virtual event, and this is I'm gonna tie together a couple things that we did in that presentation that changed, that I think you can install into all your presentations. It's what's called a through line into your marketing. I'll break that down inside this presentation. But in this presentation here, when Tony did the first virtual event, I did the sales pitch. And there was a lot of things that happened up into it to frame the audience for the pitch. Example is this. There was a lot of challenges in the world then. It was the first time that we were having a virtual event because COVID had just hit. And we really anchored people in the fact there was a lot of uncertainty out there, people losing their jobs, losing their lives, a lot of uncertainty out there, and there's only one way you can become certain in these times of uncertainty, that's to create your own economy. So the through line in the event was to create your own economy. It used to be commit to mastery. At Tony's event, he'd say, this is the identity statement, you can be a dabbler, you can be a stressor, or you can be somebody committed to mastery. When you're committed to mastery, here's what it means. Who wants to be committed to mastery? Everybody said yes. So people said they were committed to mastery like 10,000 times, and then they sell them Mastery University. At this event, the through line changed, where the only way you can become certain is to have your own economy, to create your own economy. Who wants to create their own economy? Here's what it means to create your own economy. And the best product to the process you've already committed to of creating your own economy is business mastery. So when I did the pitch, it was set up so well. This pitch did $12.7 million that day, not because of me. A monkey could have gotten most of those sales, but it was the patterns and really understanding what people had to commit to, how they were framed, so when they saw the offer, they received the offer. It's all about the framing. Just like I did with the Jordan Belfort Jam, just like you want to do with your audience, you want to be able to adapt and control the frame through which they see you, the offer themselves, their future. Does it make sense? Yes or no? Awesome. And so, by the way, this was my last month working for Tony. I was working half as much as everybody else. We had a sales agency at the time. This is like 2018, 2019. I had my own sales agency, so I was working half as much as everybody else, talking to half as many people. And I share this with you because we all had the same script, saying the same words, with the same offer, the same price point, to the same people every single day. Only difference is I'm talking to half as many people. And there was something different in how I communicated what I was doing and how I connected to the people. And you can see the results are a little bit different. So again, is it important to maybe work on not just the offer, but how we communicate and connect with the offer? Yes or no? Awesome. And so, by the way, let me back this up. And I'll share this one thing with you. when Tony took me to Fiji, I asked him, he was so patient and so kind, I asked him a bajillion questions about sales, influence, his morning routine, his personal life, like stories, interventions, things that I saw him do in presentations. And I had parts of his presentation memorized. And I'd say, why did you do this? Why do you say this? And he just sat there with me for hours and hours and hours and we went through it. And I ended up asking him this question about how he saw the process of influence. And he said something to me that day that was so powerful. I said, can you say it again? And he did. I took out my phone. I recorded what he said. When I went home, I transcribed it. And I literally read this thing to myself every single day before all my presentations. And it put me in a state, like a mindset of just being unleashed. He said something to me that was so powerful. It changed how I saw sales, presentation, communication. This one statement I know became the foundation for me selling extra tens of thousands of people and putting millions of dollars within my own pocket. Would you like me to share with you exactly what he said? By the way, what was that? A pre-frame. So we call this, and what I'm going to do throughout this presentation, and I'm going to point this out, the structure of it, and I'm going to give you some examples. We call this POV, perception of value. So a lot of you have gold, or you have an offer, or you have something, but how you frame the gold, or how you frame the challenge. We call this the best interest frame. Sometimes when I challenge the audience, sometimes when I challenge somebody personally, even in a webinar, I'll pull somebody out. And I'll do an intervention with them, and the whole audience, just like when you see Tony do an intervention, they're like, holy shit, what is this? This is real. Because also, this is a side note, I think AI is amazing. And everybody is going to have these perfect presentations written by AI, and they're going to sound great with great offers, and you're going to have like a rendering of yourself, where you can have an image where it looks perfect, and it does this perfect presentation, but after that happens so often, I think so many people in the audience or out in your market are going to say, is this real or is it AI? And so for you, your capacity to sell big ticket and make a big difference in this industry, where you be capacity to actually communicate, like doing a live, doing something in person, because that's where you're going to make a lot of money. And maybe you do something low ticket with your funnel and your webinar and you get AI or to do this thing, but to be able to connect, to have empathy, because people have an experience of who you are. And so you have to double down on this thing called communication. And part of how you do it and how you deliver the value will be shaping somebody's perception of the value. I'm going to give you some examples of that. But would you like me to actually share with you what he said? You sure? All right. He said this, and you can screenshot this. He said, to influence someone, you must be connected to that person. You must not only understand them intellectually, you must understand and appreciate them. Because, by the way, you can understand somebody and you can judge them. You can never influence somebody if they feel judged by you. You must connect to them, their needs, their wants, their desires, their fears. You have to step into their world without buying into their story. That's the unique balance, to step into somebody's world and appreciate them, but not buy into their limitation. If you buy into their limitation, you've added no value to their life. The added value offer representing me and our partnership with these potential clients and customers is that we don't buy their limitation. I don't buy limitation, how long they can go without food, how late they can stay up, how intense they can feel, or what they can achieve. And because I don't buy into those limitations, and because they feel that I care, and because I'm willing to go there first, I can influence them. And I was like, that's it. So how do we step into somebody's world, make them feel like we actually understand and appreciate them, and see a future for them that they don't see for themselves, and get them to borrow the belief that we have in them, transfer that belief so they trust us enough to get them to make a recommendation for how they live their lives. That's what we get to do. And so this is like the worst slide ever right here. I spent so much time last night trying to make like an XY axis. Here's how I think about the process of influence. So it's supposed to be change at the top. Like this is like change on this axis, and then time this way. Do you guys understand it, yes or no? I couldn't do the word time, so I just screenshotted the word. So anyway, this slide is a cluster. And I said, I couldn't do the line at the bottom, so I just put Michael Jordan there because I like him, and it's awesome. So anyway, here's how I see the process of change. And this quote that I'm about to share with you, what I'm going to share with you, is actually inspired by Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan said this: I never lost a basketball game. I only ran out of time. I believe there's nobody in the world that I can't sell. Nobody. Now, I might have to discount my service. I might have to go to your house. I might have to become best friends with your husband, wife, dog. I might have to do something where I need to go there and babysit you for the next 5 years to get you to buy and follow up with you like crazy, but that might not be worth my time. So I am the evaluator here. I control the frame, but because I know that it's possible for you, I know that it's possible this thing can happen, and I know what it's going to do for your life. So I have zero certainty, zero uncertainty, and I have nothing in me that's like trying to get approval, that's trying to get something because I already know this can happen. So having that certainty and you believing that it's only a matter of time is what's going to be key. But the other side is this. We're getting somebody to change. That's what we're selling, change across time. And that could be 5 years, 1 year, and an email or a sequence or whatever. But when I started to get somewhat intelligent after doing about 1,000 presentations, I started to interview people that were big companies like Salesforce.com or individuals that were like really standoffish when they saw me, and then they ended up buying. And I'd ask them, I'd say, at what point in my presentation did you know, or at least feel, or get curious, or like at least become open to buy from me? It wasn't the offer. They're like when you slowed down and you said that thing, or that person challenged you in the audience and they weren't very nice and you responded with kindness. And I thought, man, I can trust this person. And I thought, if you say you had all these magic moments, these magic selling moments, how do we begin to manufacture these and install these into a presentation? What are the key elements? What are the components of what Tony does, or anybody that you follow that you think is amazing? What are those moments that begin to shift belief and create trust and connection? And I started to look for those in other presenters and, not just Tony, but everywhere, and find those patterns. As I was studying all of this, I was reading a book by Robert Dilts, Sleight of Mouth. Anybody heard of NLP? Yeah? Bandler, Grindler, all really amazing. When I read this book, Sleight of Mouth, it was about reframing all these belief patterns. Somebody says they don't have money. Well, I'm sure your intention isn't to keep the money you have. Your real intention is to make sure you never have to worry about money again. Intention pattern. So isn't it more important, hierarchy of criteria, isn't it more important that you do something different today so you're not in the same spot next year? Because you don't want to be in the same spot next year, do you? When we look at the most successful people, model of the world, reality strategy, how do you know that you can't afford it? So I began to play with this and add them into stories and frames and find these moments where we could break and shift beliefs and also emotionalize the content and slow down at certain times to create vulnerability and connection. And I find that people would go to my 1 hour talk, and if they were still in the room, I'd be talking for 6 hours and they would stay. I did my first 1 day virtual event recently. It was supposed to be 4 hours. I spoke for 9.5 with no breaks, and nobody left. And so part of that is how we engage people's attention, how we slow down, how we take them on that emotional roller coaster. And we're going to do some exercises around that today. But this right here, this process of understanding, I can always win. I might not have enough time. And then if I do have limited time, how do I create enough of those moments in the time that we have? Does that make sense? How do I take them on that journey? So this is that process and what I learned. So our understanding of what it takes to get people to buy, we kind of boil this down to 3 main phases. And it's the foundation is trust. Getting people to trust in you, the speaker, the communicator, the salesperson, through your story and your style, how you actually connect. And I'm going to give you some exercises with that. Then is getting people to trust in your process and your product. I talked a little bit about that. The process, like creating your own economy. The product, business mastery. The process, what are you ultimately selling? What's the higher value? And what is the product? The product is answering the thing that they've already bought into. And then the biggest thing that we teach, which really shifts people in their presentations, is getting people to trust in themselves. I just got off the phone call. I was just texting back and forth with, Jeremy Minor? Really amazing guy. We doubled his close rate on his, and he's a brilliant communicator. So we coach people and we take the top 1% of people. Hermosi and his company Gym Launch, the last event, I said, I just do the repitch. After they were all pitched already, I came on, I pitched the same offer, I pulled an additional $1 million out after Alex and Kale had already pitched them, because of the framing of getting people to buy into themselves with empathy and trust. And so this is our model. And I'm going to go through a couple exercises from this here today. And you can screen that and shot that if you want, or we can have somebody send you some slides. But story style, $100 million stagecraft secrets, the stories, irrefutable future formula, and identity shift framework. So we've got a bunch of tools here, but I'm going to go through these relatively quick. I mentioned one, POV, perception of value. So here's what it might sound like. So I'm going to break this down right after I say it, because it's going to go really quick. Just like sleight of mouth, language moves really fast as we're installing these beliefs. So I'm about to share with you something that every sales trainer, every speaker has failed to mention before. And the reason that nobody else is teaching what I'm about to share with you is, one, because they don't know it, or two, they don't want you to know it. This took me 10 years to find out and to figure out, and over $100,000 worth of my own money. However, I know you cannot survive without it, so I want to give it to you now. Pause. What every other blank has failed to mention or teach is what I'm about to share with you. So that's called a category of one statement, COO. So I'm beginning to frame the audience of the fact that you can't get this anywhere else. And then as soon as I say something that's a bold statement, I give you a reason why. The reason why they're not going to teach you this is because, one, they don't know it, they're dumb, or two, they know it, but they don't want you to know it, they're unethical. Now we're going to attach time and money to it. This took me 10 years to figure out, and $100,000 with my own money. However, I know you cannot survive without it, so I simply want to give it to you now, reciprocity. So I did 5 things there in less than 10 seconds. Do you guys, yes or no? You guys, what? So what am I doing? I'm installing frames, and when we break down people's presentations, we begin to install these frames to set up the value, to change the perception of the value, and sometimes even change something in your tonality to challenge the audience or to connect more emotionally with the audience. And so there's some tonalities that I'm modeling here that will pull your audience in. And again, a lot of people have, some of you are marketers, or some of you you got sales offers or whatever. A lot of people's offers look the same. They got these crazy guarantees. They read that purple book again. So your X factor is your communication, your capacity to connect. And so regardless of the thing, it's your communication of the thing. Just like with Tony and Myron and stuff like that, they emotionalize the audience. And I'm telling you, if you have a killer offer, you go through Jason's stuff or whoever's stuff, and it's really good, and you got this amazing offer, but then you connect deeper. I swear, like if you combine the both, it is a superpower, and people will be addicted. They'll stay with you for life. Second strategy. So this right here, this literally doubled my sales overnight for real. And like, there's a couple I'm going to expand a little bit deeper on. This is one of them. It's called postures. Just to make sure you guys are here with me, can you say this word? Postures? So there's 3 key postures that I'm speaking to right now, and you definitely want to do this. Once I really got this, like my sales like just exploded. Tony took me and one other dude to Vegas, and we did like fight training with the Navy SEALs. We shot machine guns all day. We just had a boys' day. And at the end of the day, he told us like all the things that he was installing on us, and it was just like this idea of postures. So there's 3 main postures that you'll see a speaker or communicator or salesperson move through. One is called superior. What is it? Superior. Here, I'm being challenging. When you think of like maybe a Garrett J. White, who's awesome, by the way, or that dude, he's like a motivational, listen to me, listen to me. It's like talking down to the audience, and that's fine in bits. But if you stay there talking down to the audience, one, you'll only be able to sell people that admit they're inferior to you. So you're missing people that are actually having a lot of money, because people with a lot of money don't want to be pushed into thinking that they're like inferior to you. So if you talk down to your audience, you're only going to get weak people, or people with money are going to end up pushing back, say, fuck you, I don't want to be talked to like that. Does that make sense, yeah? And you see that in the comments when some of these people like yelling and screaming and all of that. And it's fine and it's good in bits. Superior. Where I spend most of my time is equal. You talk to people like a friend. You're connecting. And you see people that are super successful, and when you talk to, anybody that you really look up to that I think is amazing, they talk to people like a friend, like we're the same. So I spend about 80% of my time here, equal. And the third posture is inferior. Oh my God, guys, I can't even believe I get to be here with you. I have so much respect, and I know on any other given day, if you were here speaking, I'd be taking notes because you're all amazing. Now, at times, that can be really useful as well. So when I first started selling for Tony, for example, I was 27 years old, and I would go speak at companies sometimes where it's a group of 50-year-old guys that are all making $1 million a year. I'm like 27, mumbling and stuttering, going through a presentation, and I'm like, listen, you fuckers, hey, here's how you need to change your life. And if I start talking down to them, they're going to be like, get the hell out of here. And so eventually, I'm going to be able to ramp them up with my tonality, and I move the energy. I'm going to move the energy up. I'm going to ramp them up where they get conditioned to the compliance of me making demands of them. But I got to meet them where they are. So I'd start really inferior with that talk. But if I had a bunch of 19-year-old guys that are like big fans of mine or whatever we're doing, I can be more, but I'm going to ramp up to that place where they start to respond to me. Does that make sense? So I got to meet them where they are. And when I say inferior, doesn't mean you're an inferior person, doesn't mean you're weak. Has anybody done Brazilian jiu-jitsu or any of this stuff? Like you've heard about it at least? Like, you can be on your back in an inferior position, and you can kill somebody. And a lot of times, too, when you're inferior in your tone, and I'm so humbled, all of that, other people will often, people with big egos, who are often the people that do have money, will lower their guard. And you can ramp them up. You can ramp them up a little bit. And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Also, what I'm doing here, what I'm modeling is I'm creating a lot of compliance. Everybody say this word, compliance. Wave at me. You guys hear me? Say compliance. So there's 3 types of compliance. One is verbal. I get you saying the things that I want you to say, like compliance. Next is physical compliance. Do the thing I want you to do. Stand up, sit down, turn to your partner, shake hands, wave at me, clap, whatever it is, like some physical compliance. And then really where I focus most of the compliance after I see people responding to me is mental compliance. Because even now, as you're listening to me, you might begin to think about where you could install some of this in your presentation, and that's smart of you to think. What am I doing now? I'm telling you what to think about. Does this make sense? Mental compliance. And I can slow those down and I can change things with my embedded commands at a high point or really at a low point so they land. And so yes, if you want to be masterful in communication, you need to choreograph. You need to practice some of this. You can't just think through your presentation. And when we work with people like Jeremy's an example, so I was just talking to him, like we go through slide by slide, and I'll work with him, each sentence out of his mouth, I'm like, say it like this, say it like this. We might rehearse one sentence 50 times. And some of you have challenges and events, and you don't have to do it to the entire thing, but there's key moments in your presentation you need to rehearse. It's kind of a performance. When I first saw Tony Robbins for the first time, it's a 3-day event. I'm jumping up and down. I'm laughing. I'm crying. I'm like, this is the most amazing, magical, spontaneous thing ever. 2 months later, I'm working for the company, and he does the same presentation. He cried at the same point. He's like, I was like, it was like a performance. And some of you, like this art of communicating, like I believe this, you cannot bore people into buying. Your audience will forgive you for a lot of things, flubbing your words, having bad slides, a lot of stuff. But you cannot bore people into buying. And so, where's my clicker? All right. So this is postures. By the way, you can combine these. I'm going to show you in a little bit how you begin to combine them. You don't want to stay at any one too long. I spend most of my time equal, but I'll start to ramp up the audience, challenging them slightly more, and seeing how they respond. And sometimes, too, you might have a heckler. If we have time, I'll role play with you guys and share with you how I would frame the audience if you're getting a heckler or bad energy, because I'm always going to win the audience. And so, third one right here, this is something that I put into all my presentations, and I've seen a lot of your webinars. You don't do any version of this. I'll give you a couple examples, but we say, no gap, no sale. No gap, no sale. And you have to be able to set the criteria. By the way, guys, scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think you communicate in your VSLs, webinars, presentations, on stage? Scale of 1 to 10, like 10 is Tony Robbins is asking you for advice. 3. Yeah, Jason Fladley is signing up for your seminar. That's a 10. 1 means that it could be a heck of a lot better and you know it. Scale of 1 to 10, how well do you communicate? Who here said they're like a 1 or 2? Awesome, thank you for your honesty. It takes a lot of courage. Who's at a 3 or 4? So what am I doing now? I'm creating a gap. But what did I do? I set the criteria. So in my Tony talk back in the day, I might say something like this. Because no gap, no sale, so I'm going to expand your gap. And I'm going to put pain into your gap. But I've got to strengthen that gap. I've got to, emotionalize that gap. But I've got to create the criteria for the gap. So it might sound something like this. I was at a Tony event one time, or I was at this seminar, and this guy was on stage, and he asked a question. It sounded kind of like this. He said, scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you're tapping into your full potential as a human being? And I thought to myself, and I wrote down my number, and then, right there, actually, my girlfriend was in the audience, and she was sitting next to a lady named Oprah. Anybody heard of Oprah Winfrey? Ever heard of this person yet? And jokingly, my girlfriend Amy said to Oprah, scale of 1 to 10, where are you at in your potential? Oprah, what number do you think she said? She gave herself a 3. Is Oprah successful, yes or no? Yes or no? I had a 3 though, and I wondered, why is that? Here's what Oprah said. She said, despite all of her success, she feels like she only scratched the surface of the potential of a human being. So where do you think you are? So what did I just do? I lowered your number. So let's flip this just so you understand it. Like on a sales call, let's say I hop on a sales call with somebody and I'm talking to them, and we're like 8 minutes into the call. They've mentioned finances are kind of tough. I just had to pay all these bills. They're giving you these red flags and outs for the end of the call. And so I'd say, hey, I know you brought up this finances thing a couple times now. Scale of 1 to 10, where are you at financially? 10 means that you pretty much got the money to do whatever you want. 1 means you're over $1 million in debt and you're literally living on the street. That's a 1. Where would you say you're at? Oh, I'm not that bad. So, but if I had said 10 means you got $100 billion, 1 means you're doing okay. He's like, I'm gonna do 1. But I chunked up his answer. I controlled his answer. Does that make sense? And so no gap, no sale, but also we can control the gap by setting the criteria. Does this make sense? And then I work in all my presentations, even like if you see Tony Robbins do UPW, they have like an entire gap map where you break down all the different areas of your life. He makes sure that you have a high standard, and then you see all these gaps. And now you have a reason to stay in the room, a reason to be put in pain, because he does the whole pain-pleasure thing. So it's sequential at getting people into these places of vulnerability, of trust, of realizing they have something to work on, and it's really important, and we're creating more leverage. So this is what you do when you have a gap. I'm going to fly through these because I got a lot. So you want to be able to maintain attention. Like I know you're hearing all these people talk about how we're in an attention deficit economy. When I started to go through those presentations at Tony's, and with a highlighter or even other masterful speakers, I noticed they asked lots of questions. And I thought, why do they do that? Have you guys noticed that in a lot of presentations, they ask lots of questions? And what are the types of questions they ask? Well, there could be connecting questions, background, probing, clarifying, challenging questions. There's so many different questions, aren't there? I noticed that he had about 60% of everything that came out of Tony's mouth was a question. And even the cadence of the question set up a response from the audience. Have you ever thought to yourself, is this all there is? We all have, haven't we? And maybe there was something in your personal life or your business life or your health or your relationship, or maybe it was your kids. We've all got some area of our life we want to improve, don't we? Question, 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 opening up the audience. Statements lull your audience into trance. Statement, 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 statement. Questions begin to open the mind. I think we're all slightly traumatized from the time we were in kids. We weren't paying attention, and then the teacher asked us to question, and we're like paying attention. And so when you start to infuse in your webinars and presentations, go through, transcribe it, and look for what percentage of the time you're asking questions, because also the way you set up your key points and get people to open to receive your content is by asking questions. Also, and I'm going to go through this, there's more in the slides, but questions are so important. Why do I say that? What do I mean by that? Here's a takeaway. Here's a writer-downer for you. When I question my own content, the audience won't feel the need to. Here's something that can change your life. Now, why do I say that? Here's something that we found completely changes how you sell. Now, how do we actually install that? And why is this so crucial to your business? I question my own content. And if I keep on any objection in your mind, if I question it myself and I question my own content, I question my own statements, 1, it triggers the content. We're not have to focus on, I don't have to memorize everything I'm going to say because the questions trigger the content that's inside of me, but I'm answering the questions that are in their mind. But I question myself first. And after a while, if the answers begin to make sense, the audience doesn't feel the need to question me as much anymore, given long enough period of time. Does this make sense, yes or no? So we need to be able to grab attention, but also maintain it. Also, when you watch really amazing speakers, they're doing not only question control, which I just demonstrated, they're using a lot of attention generators. Because here's the thing. Bottom line is this. If you get one thing today, it's this. Now, here's where people really screw this up. These are statements that you want to begin to plug into your presentation that will generate attention. Here's the thing. Bottom line is this. Now, here's where this is crucial. You hear what I'm doing, yes or no? Yeah. All right, just making sure you're with me. Agreement amplifiers. So if you've studied NLP, this is the language of presuppositions. They say, don't assume the sale. Yes, you need to assume trust. There's a lot of assumptions, into what you're saying. And so these agreement amplifiers are things that you need to be able to install to set up some of your statements. And a lot of people will just go with it. It's amazing how people just go with things. And if there's enough emotional connection and trust, people will just kind of do whatever you say. So I put some examples for these. Everyone knows that the quality of your life comes down to the quality of your communication. Now, this is obvious. You'd have to be a fucking idiot to realize you need to work on your presentation. We all realize that, don't we? Yes or no? Yes. So it's obvious, you know? You'd have to be an idiot not to know this. It's a widely known fact. There's no need. Look, the debate is over. Everyone's already aware of this. It goes without saying. However, I want to make sure, so I'm going to tell you this anyway. So there's a lot, we've gone through. Does anybody know my buddy Chase Hughes? Really amazing guy. I think Chris Voss is amazing, brilliant, in fact. But every FBI, CIA protocol is Chase's. Like, first want to create a Manchurian candidate where they hypnotize somebody to the point where they become an assassin, like literally kills people. And I'm just like, man, what? So those are really intense processes. But a lot of this in the framing and connection and, you know, being like a spy type stuff. I've always been, I geek out on those type of shows. And when you watch even in shows, they're using a lot of this type of language to get people into this compliance, if we will. Next, this is participation prompts. And you've probably seen this if you've seen a lot of motivational speakers. I don't do a ton of these, but they are important. If you guys hear me, wave at me, you know, tap yourself on the chest and say, that's me. If you guys follow me, say, I follow. If that's okay, say, that's okay. These are participation prompts. I think you can do some of those and you'll get more engagement with your audience. By the way, if it's a webinar, a live, a virtual, you need to get engagement. You need to get people in the chat, doing stuff, saying stuff, waving at you, moving around. It'll be a fun experience and you'll get more response and more sales and more engagement if you do some of this. However, with participation prompts, if you do too many of them, it's cheesy. It's weird, you know, and it's annoying. And a lot of people that get annoyed by it are the people with money. Make sense? You know, you can go to some like motivational seminar and some people jumping up and down. I like my whole presentation is focused on, and I'm gonna break this down in a minute on another slide. I'm gonna crank though. So tonal archetypes. I want to go through these really quick because as you're practicing these presentations and as you go back and review your presentation, hear the presupposition. As you're doing this thing I'm going to tell you to do, you want to look at how you're communicating. As I said, you cannot bore people into buying, so you cannot flatline your communication. Now, flatline, like a dead heartbeat, it's just like it's just dead. And so, going back to what we talked about, like even with the postures, there's a change in the variance. If you were to create these into archetypes, what it might sound like is where I spend a lot of my time is sage voice. Everybody say sage. And I think of this as like a high-powered CEO. And I remember being very young, but nobody in my family's ever made money. Nobody in my family's ever made more than 14 grand in a year. And my mom worked at a country club, and she's an amazing lady. When she spoke, people responded to her. But I remember being very young, and when the owner of that country club walked in the room, how they communicated, how they looked people in the eye, the sound of their voice, people responded very differently. And this sage voice, if you want, I think Obi-Wan Kenobi, every Morgan Freeman character, this solid cadence of a voice, people respond differently to that. I can tell you so many stories about people that were big and powerful, kind of like a Mike Tyson, but they opened their mouth and people responded to them very differently. And it could be like a little girl or, you know, an older lady. They were initially judged, but when they opened their mouth and they spoke, people shifted. They reoriented their body to this person. Sage voice. And if there was a cadence to it, it'd be like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm staying in that range. Next is warrior. What is it? Warrior. This is more punchy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've done quite a bit of that, haven't I? And so I'm there sometimes, and I'm being more punchy with my voice, and sometimes I'll do that, and I'll get the energy up. And then the third voice, there's more, but the lover. Where now I'll slow it down a little bit. And when you can combine all of these, it's what's called the charisma pattern. Because sometimes you realize that it's in your moments of decision that your entire destiny is shaped. Right now is one of those moments. Did you hear it? Sage, warrior, lover. As opposed to sometimes you realize that it's in your moments of decision that your entire destiny is shaped. Right now is one of those moments. Not quite as powerful, is it? And really boring. And some of you have 90-minute presentations that sound like that. So maybe you want to mix it up a little bit. Yes? Oh, give it to me. Yes? Awesome. So that's tonal archetypes. Quantify the gap and get them to own it. This spins off the other one. I just wanted to add this, and I'm going to crank through these quick. At some point in your presentation, like I would say this, you guys said your communication wasn't out of 10. You all have a gap there, yes? Yeah. Think about it, but you also told me earlier in this presentation that your income is somewhat related to how you communicate what you do. Is that true or false, yes or no? So if you were to communicate more effectively, grab more attention, and have people addicted to you, would your income go up, yes or no? Yes or no? A little bit or a lot? Like 100,000, 200,000? How much would it change if every one of your presentations was more dynamic, more persuasive, and more engaging? How much more money do you think you'd make? True or false? Like a little bit or a lot? Let's say it's 100,000. Can we all say it's be at least 100,000 in our life, yes or no? Okay, then is it fair to say that if you don't do something right now to improve your communication, it's going to cost you, your company, your family, $100,000? Is that what you're saying, yes or no? Yes or no? Yes. See what I did there? I quantified the gap, I tied it to a monetary result, and I got you to own it. Did you see it, yes or no? Yes. And yes, I'm going through these quick because you can watch the replay. But are you guys getting some value out of this, yes? All right, so because I got like 15 of these, we're going to crank. For you in this audience, like I got to spend a minute on this. When you have an audience or webinar or whatever, realize this. 80% of your audience is what's called an inferior mindset. Like they don't believe they can do it. They're super insecure. They need more proof, testimonials, case studies. They need templates. They need all of that stuff. But 20% of your audience is what's in a superior mindset. They believe they can do it without you. But they're just there maybe to see some tips. The superior people often have more money. They're more sophisticated. And like, I focus more on, I do presentations where I'm really clear. I've got an audience of like belongers, needers, like low ticket type people. But I know a lot of times I've got audiences that come see me where they're like really amazing. They're superior mindset. They're gonna like, they need demonstration of value. And if you're doing something in your webinar where you're doing shit like, if all this did, or using like the word imagine a bunch of times, thinking you're doing NLP, or teaching SMART goals, for God's sake, or the Roger Bannister story, or the Thomas Edison 10,000 tries, like these common things. Like you lose all the superior people. Realize this, and guys, write this down. A tactic shown is a tactic blown. And people say, oh, I saw this thing they did a bunch of times, and they saw the same thing and the perfect webinar 1,000 times, and if all this did, you use that, you do a lot of that stuff that's really common, you become a commodity. They start to put you in a part of the brain where there's nothing unique here, there's nothing new. Even if 90% of your presentation is new and awesome, you do a few of those things that are really corny and common, you lose them. You lose the people that have the most money. You guys pick up on this, yes or no? Awesome. And so, oh, by the way, I did that pitch with instead of Hermosi at the last gym launch event. By the way, we wrote out the offer. I worked with Kale on it. We went line by line. I did the repitch. I did $1 million in an hour. I made a video of me breaking down exactly what I did. Like, here's where I'm installing this frame. Here's the open loop. Here's where I challenge them. Here's where I grab a lady from the audience and I do this thing and people get emotional and cry and all this stuff. So I broke it all down. Would you like to see it? Yes? And if there is an opt-in. If you don't want to opt in, send me a message on Instagram that says, Eli, I want to be really, really, really annoying and I don't want to opt in. Can you give me special service and make sure that I don't have to do this really easy thing because I'm a pain in the ass? If you do exactly that, I'll just send it to you. But I might not. By the way, also going off of what Christine talked about yesterday, humor, like funny gets money. And what did I do? I just exaggerated something to make the other thing ridiculous. Yeah, of course you could think about it. Think about it when you're walking your dog. Think about it in the shower. Think about it when you're brushing your teeth. Think about it till the day you die. So you could do something and make it funny and challenge people and sometimes be like really like hard on people, but with humor and tact and exaggeration, and people will still let you say the really tough thing. Does that make sense? Awesome. And so I just wanted to share this with you. So Jeremy, for example, and I just put this in last minute this morning, we will go through his presentation and like go line by line, sentence by sentence. We'll like take it, we'll transcribe it. I'll go back and forth with him. And I just want to throw this in there because like if you really want to master your presentations, and if you're doing a big seminar, like people do like sometimes millions of dollars in a seminar. And I've gone to seminars, I've done repitches, and I'm on stage with like Ed Milet or other famous person or whatever, and I talk to the owner of the presentation, and I'm like, hey, let's see your pitch. And they're still working on their slides like the day of the thing. I was working on my slides this morning, but I'm not pitching. If I spent $3 million on marketing for my virtual event or whatever, You know, like we have rehearsed that thing. And so, I mean, it's like, it's crazy. Like sentence by sentence, line by line. And if you're doing one of these a quarter, it's like focus on this thing, practice this thing. So that's it. One of the things that you've seen me do a lot as well. Do I have 2 more minutes, guys? Awesome. What's that? We're good. One of the things I'm doing a lot here too, I won't have time to demonstrate, is what's called a referential index. Does anybody know what that is? If you don't, wave at me. Awesome. So when I'm speaking here, I, we, you. So a lot of times I get really challenged in my life, and I think that we all experience that sometimes. But what you need to realize is that you're good enough and you're worth it. So that was in 3 sentences, but through stories, I'm doing something personal and vulnerable, or I'm relating this to the general masses, and I don't know if anybody's ever told you that you're not good enough or that you couldn't do something. But there I was. So when I've got key moments of vulnerability, especially in your stories, I call these bounces, where I'll bounce them out to you and I'll pull you into this vulnerable moment, and it creates more trust. Does it make sense? Awesome. Hopefully that's not weird. There's so many cool things that I want to share with you. Creating associations, framing, attack and confess. I'll do this one. Do you guys like the language patterns? Can I do one more? This right here, here's what it sounds like. And so when I do my talks and presentations, basically it is a lot of this. Is anybody familiar with this concept? Attack and confess? Jason probably does something similar, but if there's a limiting belief in the audience that they have about buying, like I want to destroy that thing. You know, for me, in my life, there's a lot of times in my life where like money was a little bit of an issue, kind of a challenge. Any of you ever had a time in your life where money was a little bit of a challenge for you? Honestly, yes or no? You can be honest. For me, that was my pattern. And I know what we're really looking at here today is patterns, but this pattern came up over and over and over again until one day an experience happened in my life. And by the way, information doesn't change your life, experiences do. I had an experience that changed the way I saw myself, my money, my value forever, and I never have to worry about money again. Could I share with you exactly what happened? I wanted something so bad in my life where I wasn't willing to settle. And I'm sure you've had those experiences in your life, but I wasn't willing to settle. And maybe for you, it was like somebody in your family got sick. Maybe you wanted to take that vacation and you were no longer willing to settle, and I just went for it. And here's the magic thing that happened when I went for it. I realized all the times in my life when I said I couldn't afford it, when I said I couldn't do it, I was lying. Because if I had been more committed, I could have found a way. I proved that to myself. And so now, anytime in my life I hear myself saying, I can't do something, I can't afford something, I say, Eli, you're a liar. You're a fucking liar. Now, I wouldn't be lying to say that it's hard, and I wouldn't be lying to say that I don't know how. But to say that it's impossible to do something to make your life better, your family's life better, when other people out there doing it right now, well, that's the biggest lie we could ever say to ourselves, isn't it? So if you want to make your life better, by the way, who wants to make their life better? Then we can't lie to ourselves about what we're actually capable of, can we? Yes or no? So basically, in that little pattern, I used all the things that we just have covered so far. Did you see it? Yes or no? I did it slow, just so you could see it. I'm going to end on this because you guys have been super patient. You guys are awesome, by the way. This is the last thing, dude. The target of your communication is to get a response. If you're communicating and you're selling, everything comes out of your mouth is installing a belief or handling an objection. Or I'm creating enough trust so that I can do those things. That's the target of my communication. And I just want to leave you with this. I believe life supports that which supports life. And I think a lot of us are in this industry and coaching and business. A lot of times, especially when you're young, you do things for yourself or your ego or whatever. But you think about maybe a time in your life when you were young and like you didn't have money, or maybe you had some money saved up, and on this day, you didn't want to go to work. But you only have to think about yourself, so you could take off. You got enough money. But then some of you have had the experience of having a child, where you don't want to go to work that day, but you show up. You don't show up for yourself, you show up for your family. And when you show up for your family, more of you shows up. How many of you know what I'm talking about? When you show up for your community, when you show up for this industry, or when you even look at the most famous people in the world, like a Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, they don't just show up for themselves, they show up for humanity. And when you show up for something that's bigger than you, life supports that which supports life. I hope I've been able to support you in some way in really focusing on the quality of your communication with yourself and others to make sure that you have the impact and the income that you deserve. Thank you so much.
Receive it. Let it soak in. Let it soak in.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for
Thanks.
Eli Wild. Let's go. Look at this. Yes.
Oh, and by the way, guys, it's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. By the way.
Thank you
Eli,
so much.
one other thing. There was a picture of Superman up there, and in my mind, I'm like, you look like Superman. And there's a subconscious connection of having the Superman picture with you standing right here.
The 2003 one, I was cast. My friend Paul Nelson was managing Tom Welling, who was Superman on Smallville. They turned him down. He says, I think you'd be great. They trained me for 6 months for the role. I read for it. When you take any acting classes or anything like that, they do on-camera classes. You script out, you read, but there's like a room full of people looking at your face on a camera like this, and I could see the insecurity in my eyes, and I just quit showing up. And I began these questions that I asked. I was like, why do some people go for it? Why do some people have the script and they nail it, some people don't? And that's what got me to read books on hypnosis, NLP, framing, and somebody said, check out this guy, Tony Robbins. I think he can help you out. And that's my story. And the rest is history, as they say.
And it's truly your birthday.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.